Problem number 4 is a real life example of a situation that a lot of businesses face when they are dealing with buying insurance, and they have to calculate things called expected loss. And so the first thing you have to figure out is what are all the possible things that could happen. So this is apparently, some kind of oil company, and there's during the next 5 years, there's 3 different events or 3 different outcomes that could occur. Okay, one of the things that could happen is the loss of, the above water superstructure, which would be a $250 million loss. And the possibility of that happening is 0.30 or 30%. The probability of a total loss of the facility, I guess the whole thing, which would be a bigger loss, right? Because you'd be losing the entire facility, which is a $950 million loss. Again, there's a 30% chance that that would happen. And then there's, of course, the possibility that they're not going to have any loss at all, which is, of course, a $0 loss. It's not in there because the $0 is kind of understood. And the possibility or probability that that would happen is 40%. Makes sense, because if there is a 30% chance of each of these things happening, that's a total of 60%, which would leave a 40% chance that nothing is going to happen at all, because we know that all probabilities have to add up to 100% or 1, right? So now that we have those pieces of information to figure out the actual expected loss, okay? And I know the book can sometimes be a little bit confusing because of all those numbers. But expected loss, the symbolism that we use for that is this, okay? It's just another way of saying expected loss. And so what we have to do is find the mean for each individual event. So X represents a possible outcome. We're going to use this column to represent probability of that outcome happening. And what we do to actually find that corresponding probability, we are going to do the loss, and we're going to multiply that by the probability that that loss is going to happen. So for example, the first thing, we could have a $250 million loss. Whew, that's a lot of zeros. And there is a 30% chance, or 0.30, that it's going to happen. So we multiply 250 million by 0.30, and that ends up being 75 million. Still lots of zeros, huh? The second event that could possibly happen is the total loss of the facility. That cost would be 950 million. Again, there's a 30% chance that's going to happen. So we're going to multiply 950 million times 0.30, and we end up with 285 million. And then, of course, the 0%, like a loss of 0, there's a 40% chance of that. 0 times 0.40 is just going to be 0. So our expected loss is going to be the sum of all 3 of these. So we add together 75 million plus 285 million. And technically I'm adding the 0, but of course that's not really going to do anything. So there's a total expected loss of $360 million. I should note for the record, I believe the format of your book actually in the blank, it has like this, and then it has million. So if I were actually like filling in the actual blank in my book, like in the textbook, I would just do this. I would type 360 into the box because the million is already there for me.